basically I came up with the idea for the subnet and pitched it to him. And then he obviously saw some value in it, thankfully. And here we are today.
And what would you say is the reason Bittensor is the best place in the world to do what you're doing with video, which currently is video upscaling?
I think evolution is probably the best way to describe it. We can take an idea and then within a really short amount of time, we can evolve it into like an amazing product. So for instance, we started with our base miner. We launched the subnet. I think we bought the subnet slot on the 1st of April. And then maybe a month ago, we were already outperforming our nearest competitors on the upscaling. So if you look at the evolution in, a couple of months, what we've done with our mining team, who are essentially the powerhouse behind the subnet, it's absolutely incredible. And it's not something that I think you could replicate in the open market. To have 256 machine learning engineers working specifically on your problem and only your problem and trying to outdo the next guy just creates such a powerful output for your product. I just don't think you can replicate that anywhere else.
And the job that the miners are doing is exactly what you were doing in the traditional world. So what would you say is the difference in like how it worked in the traditional world back when you were doing it versus what you think the miners are doing, or even what the base miner was doing?
Yeah. We can take the base miner model because we know what that's doing. So, I mean, it's a lot quicker to do it with AI. So essentially before it was a manual process. So you'd go through the video, the content frame by frame. You'd have to fix the artifacts. You'd have to, go right back to the masters of the film or however it was made and, clean it up from there. So essentially what the machine learning models do is they can predict where the artifacts should be and they can kind of fill in the gaps. Say you're taking 2K and you're making it 4K. So basically you're doubling the amount of pixels. So what the machine learning can do is it can understand what should be in those pixels to create a smooth, clear picture. And that's something that to do by hand it's prohibitively expensive unless you're working for a Hollywood studio. There's just no point in doing it for, some SD content that you have in an archive somewhere. But now we can do this using AI and we can do it quickly and efficiently and essentially pretty cheaply. Then what it does is it opens up all these content archives from the last 20 years, probably the last 40 years of all this content that's sitting at old TV stations, or take Pokemon for an example. Any big content owner who has these big archives, we can now repurpose that and they can now reuse it, resell it, and get some revenue back from these content archives that they couldn't do before. So it really is quite a powerful tool, and there's a huge amount of use cases for it.
And in the current state of a subnet, what you do is this upscaling. You want to expand into compression. What is compression? What's the process going to look like there?
So actually video compression is really where I see the value of the subnet. Upscaling is nice and there's a big market for it. And it looks pretty cool. If you go on a website, you can see the slider from the old content to the new content and you can see the difference that we can make in the picture. But actually, where we're going to get big enterprise clients, big cost saving for our clients and efficiencies is from the compression. So essentially we're taking a 4K piece of content. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to make that as small as possible, file size and bit rate. So that means storage is going to be much smaller and bandwidth to play it's going to be much smaller. But what we need to do is keep the picture quality. So we call that perceived quality, the quality so traditional compression methods would be mathematical. They just take a file and they'd compress it. But what that would give you is a bad quality picture. I'm sure you've seen it when you're in a low bandwidth area and you get a really blocky picture on your streaming. So what we're essentially doing is we're getting a really high quality picture at very, very low file size and bandwidth. And that means it saves huge amount of money for the content owner, for the streamer. If we're talking Africa, for instance, which is obviously a market we're looking at, then if you're the consumer, you have much lower bandwidth, so you have much lower data cost, takes less battery from your phone. As electricity can often be a problem in these markets. There's a huge amount of savings, but even if we're just taking the file size saving, the storage of any big content owner, if we can save 58% of their storage costs, already that's a big win. And then the knock-on effect would be their bandwidth costs, their cost on their CDNs, and then the cost for streaming, the telco companies and the end user. So there's huge amounts of savings across the board, and the end result is still a really good quality picture for the consumer. So that really is going to be somewhere where I think we're going to get some, real traction, and it's going to disrupt the market because there's no one really doing it on the scale that we are. So that compression model is going to launch within the next month or so. Obviously, there will be a beta model and we'll be testing it, but the early tests, are really, really incredible. And, the benchmarks against the current companies that are doing that in this space, which are very few, are really promising. So yeah, I think it's going to be big.
And what do you think is going to be your model to produce revenue? Is it going to be purely B2B play? Like you just go to Netflix or you go to Google or YouTube?
Yeah, not purely, but pretty much. I think that's where our revenue will come in. Will be big deals with big platforms, content owners, telco companies, CDN providers. This is where the main revenue is going to come from. We will definitely have a consumer facing product for both upscaling and compression, but I don't think that will be a huge revenue generator. I think it will be more something to bring people into the subnet so they can play around with the technology and then hopefully utilize that on a much larger scale. So yeah, I think enterprise clients using the subnet on big scales is really where we see the revenue for the subnet coming.
Would any of these big companies have any concerns of like video privacy, how people have concerns of data privacy for like LLMs? Is that concern in this case?
Yeah. That is a problem that we need to solve for sure. So there's a couple of things. I mean, we're looking at ways to solve this now. Some of the things that we've talked about is to have where we use the subnet to essentially find the best talent. And then maybe if we're doing deals where there needs to be NDA signed or the content has been unreleased yet, then maybe we have an agreement with the miners where we will do that off chain. Possibly that could be something that we're doing, or we can, if we can try and solve the encryption problem on chain, which we'd much rather prefer, then that will be something we'll do. So, I think there always will be a little bit of hesitation for the mainstream clients when we say we are an AI crypto decentralized open source project. We need to prove that the security and the safety to the clients. But I don't think that's, once they see the results, and the cost, I think that's something that, we can quickly get them on board. But that's a real consideration for us at the moment, is to solve that security problem for sure.
And when you're pitching these companies and crypto comes up, what are normally their objections? Why are they so anti-crypto?
I think a lot of people that don't know much about the space, which was me a few months ago, I didn't know much about crypto. Definitely don't come from that background. I just think maybe there's quite a negative narrative around crypto where you hear a lot of, exploitation, rug pull stories where people are losing a lot of money. It's a very volatile market. So I think if you're not familiar with the space, then you can kind of tar everything with the same brush. And I think maybe that would be a hesitation from those guys. But I have great relationships from my 20 years of working in the industry. So I think, we're going to, obviously, I've got a lot of big network, a lot of trusted partners and friends that I can go to the market with. And I'm sure that I can persuade them that we're a safe and viable option for them.
You can be their warm introduction, so to speak, to
crypto. Exactly.
You've mentioned that crypto is essentially full of scams, really, with the rug pulls, a lot of mistrust. You're someone that is relatively new to the Bittensor ecosystem. So what has been your experience so far from your perception of crypto to the reality you've experienced now in Bittensor?
Yeah, well, Bittensor, like, is it an AI project? Is it a crypto project? It's kind of sitting in its own space where, it's really hard to pigeonhole. So I've honestly, since I've started this project, had nothing but immensely positive experiences from the network. That's including, the miners, the validators, anyone that I've come across. It's such a positive environment and space. Obviously, we're working in an incentive mechanism where people will try and exploit, and people have been, but we've also had some really honest feedback from the miners pointing out issues maybe that before they even became issues, so it's been a real eye opener really to the space, and what an actual immensely positive environment it is. So I feel very grateful that I found it, and I haven't had to go through 10 negative experiences to find one positive. So I think I hit the jackpot first time, so I'm super lucky.